Down here, Oriole baseball taking it on to Yankee Stadium this weekend, and of course, fake football here on Saturday night as the Lions come in against the Ravens in our final tune-up at home before the fourth preseason game that no one will watch next week. But hey, next weekend we got real football. College football kicks off, and here to talk all things college football in the season and the Terps and Heisman hopefuls, he is Rich Sermonello. He's the associate editor at Campus Insiders. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Rich Sermonello, and I'm going to spell that for you, Cirminiello. And we welcome him back onto the program from Campus Insiders. What's going on, Rich? Happy football season to you, man.
Likewise to you. It's about time. It's been another long off season, but I think we're all excited about a new NFL and college campaign.
All right. Well, I guess it's Alabama and Clemson and sort of everyone else. All the previews have one or the other, and certainly Clemson with the Heisman hopeful as well. There's a lot more going on out there, but should it be about Clemson and Alabama right now being the top two dogs entering the season?
I'll go with Alabama at this point. Clemson's certainly top five in the mix, in the discussion within the ACC. Lots of changes on defense. Offensively, no problems at all. Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams comes back at wide receiver. But I'll expand it a little bit further, Nestor. I think in terms of ACC, Florida State right there with Dalvin Cook, right there with Clemson heading into this season. And as we broaden outside of Alabama, I think it's important to take a look at Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, SEC possibly with LSU. So it's a lot of the usual suspects. I don't know if there's a team out there outside of the top 7 or 8. We probably say this every year, but outside of those usual suspects, I'd be surprised if we see a team that kind of comes out of nowhere, a la Oklahoma last year, and cracks the playoff picture.
Well, I mean, for week one, I don't know that you could ask for a much more delicious set of matchups. I mean, I've been talking about this week for, a month now. We're a week out on it pretty much and getting ready to kick the season off. A lot of big games. I mean, you mentioned LSU and just the fact that the whole Lambeau Field thing going on and Jerry's World hosting a huge game to kick off the weekend. It will come in sort of like a lion, right? People will be paying attention on Saturday, right?
Yeah, they should be. I mean, I count about 8 games that I think are must-see type matchups. And it's kind of a different picture, Nestor, than we've seen in the past. I mean, in the past it had been, you get your cupcake, your equivalent of an exhibition game in college football, face an FCS opponent or somebody from the group of 5. And certain teams are obviously doing that in week one. But when you look at the matchups, the Alabama USCs, the Notre Dame against Texas. I'll go deeper into UCLA and Texas A&M. There are some really, really juicy storylines, great matchups, and I think that's another one of the benefits of the playoffs. I think people now realize, ADs now recognize that you're going to have one of those marquee non-conference wins if you want to have an opportunity to have a schedule that rises to the level of making it to the Final Four.
Well, even Clemson going over to Auburn, and I think the Houston-Oklahoma game is a great game as well.
No doubt.
Lots of expectations. We've talked so much about these 5 conferences and only 4 teams in the playoff. I want to give you a chance to expand upon that a little bit. Certainly, this is the time of the year where you look at it and you try to dream up a scenario where the SEC or the Big Ten or that they could ever be left out of those 4. But there are 5 of them, and Houston knows as well as anybody. Being left out, right?
Yeah, listen, I think if you're going to be most concerned at this point, I think it has to be the Pac-12. And anything can happen. Certainly Big 12 is vulnerable as well, but those are 2 conferences, but specifically the Pac-12 that is so deep and has so much parity. When I look at the Pac-12 conference, Stanford is the reigning champion, 3 of the last 4 titles out of that league, solid program, but so much turnover there. Oregon doesn't look like the Oregon of Chip Kelly days. USC possibly heading north, but face a brutal schedule. I'm not sold on UCLA, so I think Pac-12, there's a chance they're on the outside looking in, and Big 12 might be the same situation. I'm not buying Oklahoma this year. If you look at the last dozen or so years under Bob Stoops, traditionally, Oklahoma is at its best when they're overlooked in the preseason. They're at their worst when they're a top 5, top 10 type team, as they are this year. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Oklahoma stumbles along the way, even loses early to Ohio State, and cedes that Big 12 title to someone like TCU.
Rich Sermonello here. He is the associate editor at Campus Insiders, and you can follow his journey at Rich Sermonello out on Twitter as well. You mentioned Stanford. They have a Heisman hopeful as well, as does Clemson. There's plenty of this to go around, and the hype at this time of the year. Give me your logic as you see this Heisman race start to ramp up, and certainly week one with some of the big matchups, these guys will be judged. I know Forset's another guy you're going to see from on opening day up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, what's interesting for me, Nestor, and I don't want to be hyperbolic about it because we probably do this every summer, but this really shapes up as, for me, one of the more fascinating Heisman races that I've covered over the past 15 years because we've never had so many returning players who were in the top 10 in previous years. 6, in fact, finished in the top 10 of the Heisman voting in one of the past 2 seasons. They're all back. So you have all of those names that you mentioned. I'll throw, I won't call him a wild card, but I don't think he's necessarily in that Watson, McCaffrey, Fournette, Dalvin Cook type territory right now. But I would put my money on J.T. Barrett of Ohio State. He's one of those guys that finished top 10, was 5th in 2014. I'm sure you recall that last year there was a lot of controversy. Is it Cardell Jones? Is it J.T. Barrett? He got swept up in that. But I think Ohio State is one of those teams that's going to maybe start off a little slowly, a lot of unfamiliar faces, 12 kids drafted back in April, so there's turnover. But Urban Meyer loves this type of a team. They're young, they're hungry. Now they're led by their junior quarterback. So J.T. Barrett is someone who is, I wouldn't say off the radar, maybe slightly below the radar, who I think could rise, get to New York City and possibly win the award.
Well, you mentioned, Ohio State and where they're headed, obviously the Big Ten. And by the way, I said Forsett. I meant Fournette. Forset's our running back here. Yep. So, hey, man, I'm getting the purple and the gold all confused this time of year. I got to get this season going. I got to get rid of this fake football. At least college doesn't play these awful games, right?
Exhibitions, I never made sense to me. I mean, I have frequented them in the past. Typically to see young kids. I think it's great to watch rookies, maybe kids who are trying to make a team, climb up the depth chart, but by and large, I never really understood the rationale other than, I would imagine, ticket sales to have 4 exhibition games.
Well, the colleges seem to manage and do okay, and there's a lot more mystery, right, around the college and the NFL because we do watch these preseason games and start to make some sort of judgment. By and large, there's no judgment made on anything, which brings me to the Terps at this point. Obviously, the quarterback situation, everything begins with that. But the big picture for Durkin and the big picture for the program and the Kevin Plank money and the Big Ten. Some thoughts. I haven't talked to you about Maryland much, and they made some noise in year 1, certainly struggled in year 2, and got the coach fired. But they've now gone out and got a coach who can recruit. The question is, how are they going to get the best kids to Maryland in the Big Ten?
I've always looked at Maryland similar to Rutgers, and it's there's.
Well, that's not a compliment.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, but by the same token, I think there is potential there. I don't know what the ceiling is. I think it's certainly aided by the support of Under Armour, but those two programs are similar in the regard that you're only going to go as far as your ability to keep kids in your local territory from going elsewhere. Rutgers hasn't been able to do it in the state of New Jersey. Maryland has done it, relatively well, but by and large, that region of the country, whether it's Maryland, whether it's D.C., which has been talent-rich, a little further south in Virginia, typically feeding major programs across the country, whether it's ACC, Big Ten, and beyond. So for DJ Durkin, it really comes down to that. Can you keep your blue chippers from leaving the area, gain some momentum? I mean, it is a tall order because if you look at the division in the Big Ten East, you have some heavyweight programs, high-dollar programs, high-dollar coaches that you're competing with. So I understand from a financial standpoint why you're in the Big Ten East right now, but competitively for football, this is a very, very tall order for that coaching staff.
Well, and I wonder how long the rope is and what they really need to accomplish. Clearly, just becoming bowl eligible this year would be a big deal at College Park.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, listen, these days I think you and I are bowl eligible if we get to 5 wins. The way the bowl season has gone, we're now up to 40 games, 41 with a national championship. So maybe that has been watered down. But for a program like Maryland, I look at bowl eligibility for those 500, slightly above 500 type teams. The importance of that is not just the game, but it's also 15 additional practices with your veterans, with your juniors, but also with your underclassmen who will be a big part of your program in 2017. So if he could scratch out 6 wins, get that bonus game in December, regardless of what the game is, obviously that would be a step in the right direction for DJ Durkin.
Obviously, Michigan State, Ohio State, sort of the Bermuda Triangle or the Midwestern Triangle in this conference. Some thoughts about where Jim Harbaugh has Michigan sort of poised and very, very quickly.
Yep.
And I know the stories were released this week about the letters to the recruits and all that stuff. But Michigan, all of a sudden, very quickly has become a play. Right?
Yeah, listen, I've always thought whether it was college football, even more so if you're talking college basketball because you have such a small roster comparatively speaking. I think college success always hinges on that man in charge. I think if you have an influential figure, we've seen it, and we've seen it across the country. Art Briles could do what he did at Baylor. Greg Schiano could do what he did at Rutgers. Chip Kelly could do what he did at Oregon because they're very strong, forceful, unique personalities, inventive individuals. And Jim Harbaugh is not just a good football coach, but he is an innovator. And his ability to recruit, what happened this week notwithstanding, his ability to bring attention to his program, his ability as a brand specialist, as a marketer, has really transcended what any other coach is able to do today. So you combine his X's and O's skills with his ability to market and bring attention to that program, and the rise for Michigan has been very quick. The fact that he can get the Rashawn Garys, the 5-star type players from different regions of the country, I expect that to continue as long as he's in Ann Arbor. For me, Nestor, I think Michigan takes another step forward this year. I don't think they'll be better than Ohio State. I think they get to a New Year's Six bowl game, which would be a leap for them. Not win the Big Ten, that's the big hurdle right now. How long before he could beat Urban Meyer in Ohio State?
He is Rich Shermanello. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Rich Shermanello. That's CIRMINIELLO at CampusInsiders.com as well. Getting us ready for the college football season. All right, give me a couple of teams that aren't, Alabama, Ohio State, or, a couple of teams you're watching this year. I've heard a buzz on several programs. I'd like to get your insights.
I'll give you 3 that I think, listen, some of them are getting buzz already, but that doesn't mean they don't warrant to be talked about. Washington, for the first time in a long time, has the talent base. Now they have a third-year coach in Chris Peterson. I think there's a possibility that they can get to the top of the Pac-12 North, which would be a big deal because that hasn't happened. Well, that has never happened for Washington, but they haven't been in Rose Bowl contention since the beginning of the century. Louisville, out of the ACC Atlantic, very good program, a quarterback in Lamar Jackson that I have compared to RG3, a young RG3. He has that kind of potential. And finally, out of the SEC, Texas A&M, rough off-season, rough times for Kevin Sumlin. He'll begin the year on the hot seat, but I think now that he has a veteran quarterback, the transfer from Oklahoma, Trevor Knight, combined with some really good receivers and defensive ends, they could be a sneaky good program. Don't think they win the SEC West, but I wouldn't be surprised if they upset Tennessee midseason and climb into the top 10 before somewhat settling back to earth.
Well, and they also have a real game to kick off the season with UCLA. Yep. I mean, a win there would certainly put them in the right direction.
That's a great point. I think, week 1 games of that magnitude could be launching points. You don't know what to expect from your team, but that locker room, the climate changes dramatically. If Josh Rosen and UCLA come into your building, you don't know what to expect from this team, you pull a mild upset, it changes the entire tenor of the 2016 season.
Well, we're all expecting Wisconsin to lose, right? We're all expecting USC to lose. We're all expecting Houston to lose, but they might not.
Yeah, listen, to me, the best upset potential out of those 3 would be Houston, simply because, I'm not buying Oklahoma. There's some turnover on defense. The offense should be fantastic with that backfield, but the one kid, if you haven't watched him or if anyone in the audience hasn't seen, Greg Ward Jr. from Houston, not an NFL caliber type quarterback, but so dynamic and explosive outside of the pocket as a dual threat. He's one of those kids that can just take a team, put them on his shoulders, and carry them to big victories. Did that last year in the Chick-fil-A Bowl against Florida State. They won that game relatively easily. So Houston, I think, is, they're not just trendy. It's a very good football team under Tom Herman. So of the three, I think that would be the most likely upset in week one.
Rich, you excited for college football, are you?
I sure am, yeah. We've talked about it for so long. Now we just want to be able to see just how ignorant we were about our preseason predictions.
Now, you're the director of college awards for the Maxwell Football Club as well as the Campus Insiders.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about Maxwell Football Club and Campus Insiders.
Yeah, in terms of Maxwell, a great organization, been there for the past 7 years, a volunteer organization. We celebrate football at every level, high school, college, NFL. We give out NFL awards, coaching players, college, coaching players. They do a magnificent job. Our president is Ron Jaworski, and we're headquartered out of Philadelphia. And in terms of Campus Insiders, just celebrated my 3rd year with the company. Love the direction of where we're headed. Headquartered out of Chicago. We do a lot of video coverage, a lot of written content on college basketball and college football. So if any of your audience can head on over to campusinsiders.com, we would be grateful.
Hey, great having you on. Appreciate the time, Rich.
Thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Rich Sermonello, Associate Editor at Campus Insiders. You can find him out on Twitter at Rich Sermonello. That's CIRMINIELLO for your college football journey this year. We got you covered. I chatted with Todd Elmick earlier this week. We'll get back into it next week. I am headed off to Germany to meet the man who saved my wife's life twice next week. But we'll have plenty of college football coverage and getting you ready for Labor Day and baseball and the playoff race, and the Birds are in Toronto next week and in New York all week. And we got plenty of things happening around here, including fake football on Saturday night. Luke and I have been out on the backfields in Owings Mills all week. Anything you missed, you can find in the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper reaches your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness. You get the headlines, the box scores, the standings, and all the news that's fit to print in one email. Pretty good thing. Many of you enjoy it, as well as our breaking news on the WNST text service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Kolatzis is here each and every Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. For me, I'm a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, including Facebook Live on a stream, and our WNS TV channel on YouTube. We're full service here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.